Here you can say, yeah, API, like a set of rules given by
Mhm.
Java to Oracle, or you can say database vendors. Database vendors in the sense all the particular databases will come. Okay. Now coming to this particular SQL commands or API, what do we need? We need a jdbc API. So here jdbc API is there. So the translator or the jdbc requires this API. Without this API, they can't develop that particular database communication. Like the connectivity cannot be happening. Okay. So now this is given by this particular Java. Sorry, the database vendors. Who is developing this API? API is developed by database vendors and given to Java people. Okay. Java is not developing the API. First thing. Okay. So what is that thing you can say? JDBC is an API. And what are the packages we have means? First thing will be java.sql.start. This is the package name. And the second thing will be javax.sql.start. Here X indicates external package. Okay. So now this is the second thing. Consider that like one more example I'm giving. Suppose there is a system, and to that system I'm connecting a pen drive or a USB, you can say, or you can say that I'm trying to have a audio, a speaker device. I'm trying to connect them to a system, and system is recognizing that what you're trying to connect. If you're giving a particular pen drive, it's recognizing it's a pen drive, right? And if you're giving a speaker, then it is able to identify it's a speaker, and based on that it is giving the audio output, right? So how all these things are possible? After the OS installation, we use drivers, like USB drivers, right? So USB drivers, or you can say sound drivers, or we have the particular Wi-Fi drivers. Means for everything we need a drivers, right? So here the same way, what is drivers? We can say a driver is nothing but a software which enables a communication or establish a communication between two devices, or you can say two mediums. So these two mediums are connected by using this driver. The same way, the JDBC needs to communicate with the database as well as Java. Means there should be a driver by using which we can have a communication between Java and database. For that reason, we'll use a JDBC driver. JDBC driver. So there are a few types of drivers. What are those drivers? We'll see. But before this, one more question. So here, this is JDBC driver. So without this JDBC driver, the JDBC translator cannot have a communication between the Java and the database. Okay. Now I'm using Java and JDBC to communicate with the database, right? But before JDBC, what is that we used to like communicate between the C, C++ and the database? What I mean to say is that before JDBC, how we used to communicate, by using C, C++ and Java, sorry, and database. Like suppose we have C and C++, and after that we have database. So here database is there. So we need a ODBC actually. Means before JDBC there was a ODBC which is used as an intermediate between the C, C++ languages and communicate with the database. Means whatever the data you want to store, you can store it directly. Okay. Then if you have ODBC, why are going for JDBC then? We can directly use ODBC itself, right? With Java also. Okay. But the problem is that JDBC, or you can say ODBC, was developed using C language. ODBC was developed using C language. And we all know that among C, C++ and Java, Java is a platform independent language and C and C++ is a platform dependent language, right? So if you are trying to use ODBC, then every machine needs a separate installation of this ODBC driver. Okay, and because of that it's a platform dependent language and we can't use this Windows generated ODBC in other operating systems. Okay, so that's a problem by using ODBC. What's the problem? You can say that ODBC was developed using C language, that is platform dependent. So to overcome this we are using JDBC, which was developed using Java programming language. Okay, so when you are trying to use Java means it's a platform independent, so mostly we need this JDBC. Then by using it we can have a communication between the Java and the database, right? So there are some types of drivers in this JDBC also. Okay, so till now is it clear everyone? Any doubts? So
No, Rohit.
yeah, fine. So if you have anything you can just ping me in the chat also.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
fine. So next thing we need to see what are the drivers of this JDBC. Okay, so before tomorrow's class make sure that you revise a concept known as polymorphism, abstract classes and interface. Okay, tomorrow again I am going to say a concept known as factory method, which is the most important thing. Now here I have some drivers. What are the drivers we have? First thing will be JDBC has four types of drivers. Okay, so JDBC have four types of drivers, you can say. First thing, like all these drivers can be used as a medium, like for a communication medium you can say. Okay, first driver name is nothing but JDBC, ODBC, bridge driver. Okay, second driver name is nothing but native API driver. Okay, and third driver is nothing but network protocol driver, and fourth is nothing but thin driver. Okay, so among these, native driver or native API driver is a partially Java driver, and here you can say this particular network protocol driver as fully Java driver. Here it is also a fully Java driver, means these are entirely developed using Java itself, and these two are entirely independent of the platform. Okay, and for the first one, if you see jdbc odbc bridge driver, right? So in this name itself we have a odbc term. Just now we have seen odbc. What is odbc? You can say object database connectivity, where you have this particular platform dependent features. Okay, so for that reason it's a drawback for every particular platform. So what you can say, here the jdbc odbc driver converts all the jdbc method calls into the odbc function calls so that it can communicate. But if you see here, if you draw the diagram, first we need a Java application, right? A Java application will be there. For this Java application, you need a Java API or JDBC API, you can say. And after this JDBC API, you have a particular bridge driver. Okay, so what is that JDBC ODBC bridge driver? And for this JDBC ODBC bridge driver, again a particular ODBC driver is required. And in this driver, after this driver, we need a particular libraries. So these libraries are nothing but the database libraries which are required to communicate with the database. Okay, so here we can use this for the database communication, you can say. Here this is Java application, simple, and this Java application requires a JDBC API. JDBC API, and here we need a JDBC ODBC bridge driver so that communication can establish. And for that we need ODBC driver because those are platform dependent, right? So here this API is used in order to communicate with this particular database, and we are using the JDBC ODBC bridge driver. Along with, we have this ODBC driver installed in every operating system based on that Windows or Linux. And here we have libraries, methods, and we have the database. Okay, so you can see directly here, without this ODBC driver and the library methods, you can't communicate with the database directly, right? It's not possible. So what you can say, this entire thing, we have drawbacks of this thing, that ODBC driver needs to be installed every time on the client machine. Okay, and whatever that particular performance is there, it will get reduced when this JDBC ODBC bridge driver and this ODBC driver is used. Okay, so now these are the drawbacks of JDBC ODBC driver, and mostly what its functionality, it's nothing but just converts the JDBC ODBC bridge driver from JDBC method calls to the function calls, means whatever the ODBC can understand. Okay, and what are the drawbacks you can say? Simply that ODBC driver needs to be installed in every client machine. That's it. Okay, so this is the first thing which had a drawback, and after this we have native API driver. So here I'll just remove this thing. This is the jdbc. I'll just save it. jdbc driver type 1 you can say. Okay, so I'm just saving that. So in E drive Java SK I'm saying this notes jdbc driver type 1 or directly. So in Java nodes I'm saving jdbc driver type 1. Okay, next after this the second driver. What is the second driver you can say? It's nothing but native API driver which uses the client side libraries of the database. Means again we require the library files, because generally if you see from C language we take the help of library files in order to use that particular function. For example, you can say printf. Printf is a function. It's a predefined function. If you want to use that printf, we need to include the stdio.h header file. That's a library file you can say, right? In the same way, here also if you want to use any functions to communicate with the database, we need to have the library. Based on that library only you can just communicate with the database. Okay, so here again what is required? We need the Java application. Same thing, because Java is trying to communicate with the database you can see, right? So here we have a particular library files, and for this library file for the Java we need API, right? And here what is required? Native API driver. Means again this a native API driver needs to be installed in every particular OS or every client who is trying to communicate. Okay, so this is a database you can say. So this is Java application, and here we have jdbc, or you can say native API driver. Here jdbc API is there, and library files will be there. So this is a database. So simple thing, if this Java application wants to communicate, it requires the API. What that API consists of? All the classes, abstract classes or interface developed by the database vendors. And here this Java application uses the native API driver installed in the client and accessing the library files. Based on that library files, it can send a command to the database. So it's entirely taking a long process for sending a simple command, right? For that reason, we have a drawback in this particular process also. Okay, and here the same thing, that native driver needs to be installed on the each client machine. That is the drawback, first drawback. And what is the second thing you can say? That vendor client library needs to be installed on client machine, means all these library files. So whatever the library files are there, it must be present in the client, then only we can use this particular methods or the function calls. Okay, so here it's Java driver type 2. Just save this thing. So everyone is able to understand that concepts, right? If I'm going
Yes, right.
fast, just let me know. Okay, I'll just slow down, or else if you have any doubts, you can ping me in chat. You can directly ask. So next here, the next thing will be the type 3 driver. So what's the type 3 driver? Network protocol driver, right? So here I'm just moving this. We have this network protocol means again we need a Java application. So we need a jdbc API which communicates with the database. But in between this, we have a network protocol driver. So network means again you will have a server, right? We required a server. By using this server, the network can communicate with the database. Okay, so here we'll consider Java application. For this Java application, we have a particular network. So when you say network middleware, you can say, or the server. Okay, and for the Java, we need a jdbc API. For this, network protocol driver is required, and using this network protocol driver, we can communicate directly with the database, right? So here we have a database. So this entire thing, whatever we have here, needs to communicate. That's the reason here first Java application uses jdbc API. So this is a common thing. Every time we'll use a jdbc API. Means you have to import the package. Okay. And here we have jdbc network protocol driver, right? So you can say network protocol driver. So next thing, we have a server. So why the server is required? To communicate between the database. So Java application sends the command to the network protocol driver. It uses the server. From the server, the query is sent to the database. Right? In the same way, we are processing every request. So it's a, you can say, server side. Sorry, you can say it a database. Okay. So this database needs the commands through this network protocol driver and server. The database gets the commands. Okay, and this is what Java driver type 3. Next, coming to the last and the most important driver, because here this thin driver is being used everywhere in the industry. Means, so we'll use only thin driver now in the market. This type 4 driver, which is nothing but the thin, is used. Now here we don't require any libraries, we don't require any particular server, and we don't require any ODBC. Just we need a Java application, and this Java application requires a JDBC API, and again we have a server like say driver. So this JDBC driver, thin driver, can be used to communicate with the database. So here you can see it's a database. So we have a Java application, and here we have a JDBC API, and here we have a thin driver which is used for communicating with the database. So next thing, we have this jdbc API which is communicating the Java application. Thin driver is used, and by using this thin driver, database communication is happening. Okay. Next, so among this, which is the particular driver which we prefer mostly? We
Thin.
use, yes, thin driver. So I'm just saving it as Java driver type 4. Okay. So these are the four types of drivers what we have. Next, we can say that basically JDBC is a translator, and this translator is used to communicate with the JDBC Java and the database. And here JDBC is an API or a specification, you can say. That specification is nothing but a set of rules given by Java to the database vendors. Why they have given means Java doesn't have any method which understand the SQL commands. So in order to send the command, we need the methods which are developed by the database vendors. Database vendors in the sense Oracle, MySQL or MySQL server or SQL server. Okay. Now JDBC requires the drivers in order to communicate with the database. Along with that, before JDBC, we used to have ODBC drivers. ODBC drivers means Object Database Connectivity, where these drivers are developed using C, C++, and which are platform dependent. That's the reason ODBC is not suitable for all the platforms, right? And here JDBC is preferred because it was developed purely using Java programming language itself. Okay, and among the four types of drivers, the third and the fourth driver are the two drivers which are fully Java driver. And among that, in the network protocol driver, we need the server. Without the server, you can't communicate. Whereas thin driver doesn't require any server. Thin driver can directly communicate between the Java application and the database. So in the industry, we are preferring only thin driver itself entirely. Okay. So before entering into the programming or before entering into JDBC, like how to install the software or a database, I just want to clarify another concept known as static block. So what this static block means, we have to see. So every time there will be two things in Java. One is instance, another thing is static. Instance means it depends on object itself. And what do you mean by object? Memory. Here static means it depends on class name. So it's a separate memory block. Okay. So here then static block is written inside a class, suppose, and I'm having a main method. Suppose I'm writing a class static demo. In this thing, public static void main string args is written. So I'm writing a system.out.println to display a message known as main method itself, right? Suppose I'm saving this particular static demo. Java SK, right? Static demo.java. So here we have a particular class static demo. I just want to execute that. cd space java sk java c space static demo.java. Class spelling is wrong. Alright, right. So here I just compiled java c space static demo.java and I just said java space static demo. Oh, I just gave a static demo, right? Java space static demo.java and here java space static demo. So we all know that a dot class file has got generated and this dot class file is given to the JVM. JVM gives this dot class file to class loader. A component known as what? Class loader. And class loader shift this dot class file from hard disk to the RAM or the JVM architecture where we have 5 memories, right? So here just when you run this thing java space static demo, we have the main method means JVM executes the main method first, right? Because static means it depends on class name. So we don't require any object to execute the main method now. Suppose if you see the JVM architecture, I'm just showing you the previous class JVM architecture that contains a dot class file. This dot class file is given to a component known as class loader, right? So what is the functionality of class loader? It converts, sorry, it shifts the dot class file from hard disk to RAM. In RAM also we have a JVM architecture where a method area is there. In this method area, all the particular variable methods a block related to static it will get executed. Okay, so here when the class is shifted automatically static variable will get executed means copy will get generated and the same way static block will get executed automatically. Automatic means you can't call it externally, programmer can't restrict it, right? And here for the method you need to call it every time. We need to call the methods in order to execute. If you're not calling means it won't get executed. That's it. Okay, so here what you understand, when the test dot class file is shifted you will get a memory for a variable, static variable, and at the same time if any static block is there it will get executed. Means if you are writing the main method also, even before the main method the preference is given to the static block. So here the static block is there, right? So this static block will get executed even before the main method itself, we can say like static block. Okay, now if I save this thing, previously we have seen that JVM is trying to execute the main method because we got the output as main method itself, right? Now coming to this time, I have a static block written inside that particular class, right? And we can just run this thing as java space static demo. So if you see here, static block is executing first, then the main method is getting executed. Okay, so we can say that even before the main method, the static block is given the preference. Means the highest preference or priority is given for the static block itself, not for the static main method. Okay, so next, what I said, when the dot class file is getting shifted from the hard disk to RAM here, then only the static block will get executed. Suppose, consider this example, I'm writing the static block inside another class. Like say a class is there and that class is nothing but, suppose Oracle is there. It's a user defined actually. I'm just creating a class with the name Oracle myself. Okay. Now I've given a static block. So if I compile this now, I'll get two dot class files because I have written two classes, right? So Java C space static demo dot Java space static demo. Now which class I'm trying to load? I'm trying to load only static demo. I'm not loading in the sense shifting the dot class file from hard disk to RAM. Okay, it's mandatory in order to allocate the memory, right? So here what you can say, that Java space static demo, if you are running it directly, static demo class will get shifted, not the Oracle class, right? So only the main method will be the output and static block will not get executed because I am unable to shift that particular dot class file, right? Because we know that only one class we can shift at a time or run at a time. So only static demo is a class we can execute because it contains the main method. Now the issue is that how to shift this another class known as static like Oracle from hard disk to RAM. For that reason, there is a method known as for name method. This is the important thing. Every time we connect a database, we use this for name. What is the purpose we are seeing here? Okay. So for name method, and here we use the parameters nothing but string, and this for name method is present in a class known as class itself. Means there is a predefined class known as class itself. Okay, and this method requires the object so that we can call it, right? But if it is static, means what? The static means here the for name method depends on class name, that is class. So directly you can use this class dot for name. Okay, and it should have the parameter. Which parameter? Whatever the class you want to shift, that is nothing but the string parameter. Means if you see here, we have a particular Java C space Java dot lang dot class. Means this class is present inside the lang package. Sorry, it's not Java C, it's Java P actually, to know that particular class methods. Okay, so in this class dot for name, what is required here? Where is that class dot for name or for name method is there? Yeah, here you can see the for name method, right? And what is this for name method parameter is there? It's nothing but string, and this string requires static, means already here static is there, so it requires a class, means I can use a class name here. What is the class name here? Class itself. So by using this particular scenario, I'll call that particular method. What's the method you can say? for name method by using class name itself. No need to call by using any object. You don't have to create any object. Okay. So what is the functionality of for name? Simple thing. For name method is used to shift the dot class file from hard disk to RAM. So what you can see here, by using this for name you are able to call this method, means shift it from hard disk to RAM. This is very important. Okay, why? Because every time if you are connecting to a database, first of all connection established must be done, right? For that connection established only I'm using this for name method. Like suppose the static demo, after the main method I'm writing the class because it's a class name, then for name. So what's that for name? We can say I'll just give it as Oracle because at this instance we have only Oracle class, right? Save this thing. But one more problem is that when I'm using this for name method, this method throws a java dot lang dot class not found exception. Class not found exception. Why? Because if you see, if I'm using the for name method, if the parameter is Oracle, then this class will get executed. Suppose if I'm giving just a slight difference in the name, okay, or just missed something, then this particular class is not found, means an exception will get occur. Okay, to overcome this, here we need to use that particular exception handling concept, that is try catch. Okay, so here java p space java c space static demo dot java. It's saying unreported exception, class not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown, right? Why? Because every time here there might be a class which is shifted, or there may not be any class which we can't shift it, right? For that reason either you can use try catch, or here you can use this particular throws. And which class it's saying it's not able to find? This class not found exception, right? Just I'm copying it. Okay, I've just selected it and copied and pasted it here, right? So the methods which might generate an exception and the compiler already knows that, those are what you can say, the methods which might generate an exception, means compile time exception or checked exception you can say. Okay, so here class dot one name, if I just save this thing, static demo, and if I run this thing, so what's happening here? Main method, and we got one more block known as static block. So how this particular static block is getting executed, or you can say Oracle static block. Okay, so how this Oracle static block is getting executed means because of this for name method, it is shifting it. Suppose if I just remove that particular method, there is no static block here, right? But if I use this class dot for name and try to compile and run, I got the static block also. That's the first thing. And suppose you might have multiple databases, but at a time you want to communicate with only one database at a time, right? So MySQL, and here I'll just say it as MySQL itself. Okay, so here save this thing. Instead of Oracle, if I give now MySQL, Save this thing, compile and run. So what we have now, main method is there and MySQL static block. Okay, because I have passed the class as MySQL. Same thing will happen in this jdbc connectivity. Means if you want to communicate with a database, Oracle database, you will give a Oracle class name. Okay, and if you want to communicate with a MySQL database, then we'll give a MySQL class itself. Clear? So this is the functionality of fun name. And tomorrow again we'll see one more part of this thing. Before that, we need to see a simple concept known as factory method. Again, this factory method is very important. If you want to understand, you need to brush up polymorphism and abstract class and interface. So everyone try to go through those concepts. Tomorrow we'll see a concept known as factory method itself. Okay, so that's the introduction of this class. JDBC introduction I've said. So next, if you have any doubts, you can ask now. Anyone, any doubts?
No, sir. No, right.
Fine then. So I'll send you the recording also. If you have any doubts,
Okay.
you